Seltzer is now live in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Illinois. Go to hardafseltzer.com today, click on the store locator, and enter your city or zip to find the closest location nearest you.
We are gold for energy. Send it. Incoming. Put the money in the bag, man.
As I said, your paycheck is your thank you.
What's going on back there? This is awesome! Welcome to Earth! No. Who's flying the plane? Get cockpit. Go. God.
Black Rifle Energy, dropping near you.
Welcome to Drinkin, Bro. Yeah, welcome to Drinkin' Bros, kids. We got a big Friday afternoon show.
Well,
here.
technically, it's not noon yet. So that makes you a liar right out
That
of the
is
gate.
that is East Coast, friends. That is my friends on the East Coast.
We don't give
I
a shit
wanna-
about the East Coast.
We sure
No.
do. We care about them. We care about everybody. Look, for years on this show, we've said we'd be happy to have anybody from the right, anybody from the left on the show. Nobody's really joined us from the left until now. Today we've got Democratic leader of the House Armed Service Committee, Mr. Adam Smith here, Congressman. How are you? Thanks for being here.
I am doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start off with this. Are you trying to do more podcasts because last election season was kind of deemed the podcast election?
I'm trying to reach out to whatever media is out there to try to get a broader message out and reach a broader audience. I mean, and look, I've been doing politics for a very long time. I ran my first campaign for the state Senate when I was 25 back in 1990. And back then, I just knocked on doors. I knocked on like 20,000 doors and I sent out mail, and that's how you reached people. It's become a lot more complicated. So social media, cable, internet, podcasts, I want to reach out to whatever audience I can reach out to. And this is one place where a lot of people are listening. So yeah, I guess I am trying to reach out to the podcast world.
Look, we love it and we welcome you here. And again, thank you for your time today. I want to start with a big question to lead us off here. For me,
Wait, is it about the Seattle Mariners?
I wish, because I think they're going to win tonight.
I do too.
In Game 5.
It's George Kirby versus Tariq
Sure
Skubal,
is.
though.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Hey, we're 3-0, 3-0 against Skubal. The question is, can you really beat him 4 times?
I know.
That's what
It's
I'm
tough.
nervous
Can
about.
anybody?
It's tough.
But I will be there. So we'll see.
Congratulations. But I want to start off with a big question here for the Democratic Party, because for me personally, as a Republican, and I've always voted Republican, it seems like the Democratic Party is split into two right now. You have kind of moderate Democrats, and then you have progressives who are way, way, way left. And it seems like they're sucking up all the media right now. And the only thing you hear about on a daily basis is an AOC, an Ilhan Omar, some of the wilder statements and figures on the left or the left side of the party there. And I don't know what it is right now. Like, how do you define the Democratic Party? Are you guys lockstep together?
Certainly not. We are a large coalition. There's the old Will Rogers quote about how I don't belong to any organized political party. I'm a Democrat. And so that's been a long aspect of our history. Big, broad coalition from all over the place that rarely completely agrees on anything. I think the biggest problem we have right now is what you identified. A certain segment of that coalition on the left has come to dominate the dialogue and the policies. Look, there's a lot of different ways to interpret how Donald Trump rose to power and what his message was. But one of the best I heard was someone said Donald Trump ran on a very simple message: progressives suck. And a lot of people in the country said, yeah, I've seen that. I've experienced that. And they felt that. And they connected to it on a whole series of issues on identity politics, crime, immigration. And yeah, I think the far left has generated more headlines and more control. Now, I do also think that we do have some really effective voices out there and who are not part of that. Ruben Gallego, Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Andy Bashir, Phil Shapiro. You've got a lot of people who are talking out there, but you're right. Typically, the far left and the more extreme comments get the attention. I mean, to some degree, it's true in the Republican Party, too. I mean, you hear about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert a hell of a lot more than you hear about Jason Smith or Tom Cole. It's the nature of what grabs attention these days. But yes, on the Democratic side, we definitely have that problem.
I noticed you didn't mention Mamdani in that reasonable list
Well,
of Democrats.
that's a crazy one there.
I did not.
Yeah, I mean, as a Democrat, are you hoping that it goes to Cuomo's way? Because to me, that would be a massive, massive signal that that is where your party is headed if he gets elected here in about 26
Cuomo's
days.
an old school Democrat. His dad was an old school Democrat.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Look, I'm not fond of either candidate for New York City mayor. Let's be honest about that. But also, let me say, I don't think it has the national implications that everyone's trying to claim it does. Democrats have never had a problem winning New York City. Okay?
Yeah.
So who winds up being mayor of New York City isn't going to have much to say about what's going to happen in 2026 in the swing states and swing districts where we need to win. Now, I mean, Mamdani has captured social media. We started off talking about how do you get your message out in the modern era. He's very good at that. But the two problems, and I'm dealing with this, Dan and I talked about this in an earlier show about the city of Seattle and King County. There's a whole host of problems with sort of the socialist left's approach to governing. But the two that I like to drill down on are, number one, you can't give away free stuff to absolutely everybody. Healthcare, education, transportation, housing. There's the old cliche that the trouble with socialism is sooner or later we run out of other people's money. And that's true. I mean, and look, I believe in a social welfare state. I believe in education and all that, but you can't come along to everyone and say, well, it's funny. My father used to say the classic, dad line, the world doesn't owe you a living. Well, to a certain extent, socialism comes along and says, oh, no. The world does, in fact, owe you a living. You take away personal responsibility. You take away hard work. You're not going to be able to govern on that model. But the second big part of this, the way the left has tended to govern, is without any respect for hard work, responsibility, and results. They throw money out to organizations that have no proven track record of doing anything. We got this thing in King County called the Regional Homelessness Authority that's been passing out contracts. But the people they hired were all based on lived experience, not on their ability to actually do a job and show results. And then you've got all the politically correct language. If you actually ask your employees to work and show results, you are creating a hostile work environment, and you wind up in a week-long HR session instead of actually trying to deliver housing or education or law enforcement or anything. So the left has got to deal with those two basic governing problems before they're going to be able to effectively run anything, much less the city of New York.
Yeah, well, let's take your state, for example, and you mentioned Seattle. Seattle seems like a war zone from, the outside world, who's not there.
That's an overstatement.
I'm kidding, obviously, but you did have a pretend city called Chaz for a while where people were kings there. They were their own. They were putting Burger King hats on and ruling with flags and blankets and sheets and. It was a wild situation.
You're just jealous.
I am jealous, but let's take Seattle for example.
Right.
Yeah, that was one of the craziest things I've seen in our country in a major city, and it seemed to go on for months and months and months, and nothing happened there.
12 weeks, but yes,
yeah. Well, that's 3 months. But still, that's a long time.
You're right. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's all right. But with that, this is happening in a lot of Democratic-run cities. New York is having their issues. You know, Kathy Hochul just put the 10,000 troops back down on the subway. LA is a mess. I moved from there. San Francisco, they seem like they've kind of just given up on. Chicago, south side of Chicago in particular, still homicides, you know, range from 30 to 35 a weekend. It's not great. And these are Democratic-run cities. What can they change about the policy, and what's different from you and them, I guess? Because it's crime.
Yeah, no, I've been fighting this battle in Seattle, King County, because as a Democrat, I want to govern well. Okay, so what can they change? They can introduce the concepts of personal responsibility, accountability, hard work, and result into their government instead of believing that nobody is responsible for the crimes they commit, the drugs they abuse, or their inability to provide for themselves. Now, I believe in a balance. I want to help these people. I'm not some right-winger, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, screw you. No, I'll get education system. Hell, I'll come up with alternatives to incarceration as long as there is personal responsibility. But we have adopted a radical viewpoint that says, no, you are not responsible. You know, it's the Repo Man line, I blame society. And I liked the response from Emilio Estevez, bullshit, you're a punk, you've always been a punk, it's your fault. You know, we need to balance that, and we just don't, okay? We have bought into the notion that it is societal forces that drive all individual actions. And once you send people that message that they're not responsible for what they do, the problem metastasizes because everyone's like, cool, you know, and I don't have to do anything. Sorry, I don't want to tell too long a story here.
Oh, God.
It's an overstatement to say that I was a juvenile delinquent, but I grew up with a bunch of people in a blue collar area where we did shit, okay?
Yeah.
And the notion that if we had got caught doing something, they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You know, what's wrong in your life? How can we help you? Okay. And that was it. You know, you got to have a little bit of both. And we've gotten out of balance. And yeah, the chop zone was a disaster. And by the way, kudos to you for calling it Chaz, because that was the first name.
Thank
and then
you.
they realized that the acronym Chaz just really wasn't cool. So they tried to change it to Chop. But I say no rebranding. If you were Chaz, you got to live with Chaz.
You got to
that
stay
was
with
an utter
Chaz.
complete disaster.
Thank you. I take my Chaz's very seriously. Chaz Bono.
Yeah.
Quite a few. Chaz Palminteri. A lot of Chaz's that I take seriously here.
Brooklyn Tale, or what's it called?
Yeah, there's
what's the name of that movie?
Boys
Bronx
Life.
Tale.
Bronx Tale. Yeah. There's
Great.
a
It's
lot
great
of
movie.
them there. Great movie.
So we got to do better is the bottom line.
Sure.
Yes, we have to govern better. We have to show people that we can deliver.
Well, there's also actually has to be consequences at some point, right? Like how many of the people who took over part of a city for 3 months in America and had armed guards policing people's traffic in and out of it went to prison?
Yeah.
The answer is zero.
Zero there. And yeah.
I agree. And we got that problem right now. I had a staffer on my team that was assaulted by a group of left-wing protesters storming into one of my town hall meetings. Now, thank God that happened in the city of Renton, not in the city of Seattle, so they did, in fact, prosecute the person. But you've got a group of people who took over the engineering building at the University of Washington, did $1 million worth of damage, and this is probably 8 months ago now. Nobody's been charged.
None. And that's happening in all these cities, by the way. Yeah, and that's happening in all these cities, by the way. And I don't know why. Why the...
I do.
Oh, you do. Go ahead.
Yeah, because they don't believe in the concept of punishment or the criminal justice system. You know, I've had a number of people say to me, jail doesn't work. And my answer is always, well, it works for some people. All right. It is a response to hold people accountable. But there really is an ideological belief that, you know, if you commit a crime, you have only done that because of the circumstances that you find yourself in, and that holding the person personally responsible completely misses the point. And again, I'm in favor of balance. I'll work with people. I'm not going to say because you committed one crime, we're going to throw you in a hole and that's it for the rest of your life. Depending on the crime. But you also have to hold people accountable for what they do. And we sort of radically shifted over to this concept that no, root causes are the only thing that matters, not individual responsibility. And I think you have to strike a balance. We've left that behind. Look, there are still people in Seattle, King County government who think the criminal justice system ought to be abolished.
Yeah.
It's absolute fact. And that's why.
Which is crazy to me, and obviously it doesn't work with what we saw in Seattle. Los Angeles went through a similar problem as well, in San Francisco.
I think if you're trying to run a civilized society, one, law and order matters, and the reason it matters is because of what you mentioned, which is personal responsibility, and consequence is the gatekeeper for personal responsibility. But the second order effect of it is that in a representative republic or a society of any sort, whether it was old school feudalism or what our representative republic today, you ask people who do better in life to contribute more to society. That's how it works, right? Whether you agree with that in principle or not, that's how it works. It's how it's always worked. It's how it will always work, right? And I think there's something noble, patriotic, and ethical about being a high performer and recontributing back to your society, whether it's where you came from originally or just where you live, right?
Sure.
I'm fine with that. However, the people who are in those positions, who are high performers, affluent, wealthy, whatever you want to call it, are not going to participate in that if everything is fucked all the time. If they have their car stolen and there's no redress in the court system for it, they're not going to participate in that. They're going to move their shit somewhere else.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And these, they would call it white flight, call it whatever you want, but it's the result of a lack of consequences in areas. And this is the thing, right? So rights and responsibilities are two sides of this coin.
And I just jump in on one, completely agree with that.
Yep.
But the white flight thing is the people who are most impacted by this, certainly in my district, are black people, Hispanics,
Always.
and people.
Always.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you saw this poll.
And they're angrier about it than anybody because their neighborhood they're not safe in.
I don't know if you saw that poll in the fall of 2020 after the summer of love, after your cities all got destroyed. But somebody did a poll in Oakland, which is I used to live there. I lived in Piedmont, actually.
Sure.
But Oakland, pretty black.
Yeah.
Pretty brown. Ask people a question: you want less cops, the same amount of cops, or more cops? 83% of people said the same amount or more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It is an absolute fiction that black and brown Americans in their neighborhoods don't want those neighborhoods to be safe. I don't know where that came from, but it's diabolical. That's what it is. You know what I mean? So yeah, it is the black and brown communities that suffer more from it because those are their communities. It's fucking stupid. It's like I don't know how much, and I think you're seeing that in the electorate as well. Black and brown people are voting more Republican now than they ever have, right?
Right.
And that's probably the only reason that I can think of that makes sense why they would do it.
That's the idiocy of what I'm dealing with. If you ask what the number one issue is for Democrats right now, and I represent a 70% Democratic district. I didn't used to. I started out representing a 50-50 district, but redistricting shoved me up into Seattle. If you ask them the number one issue is they're worried about Trump. Okay, number one, there's a whole bunch of different pieces to it. But the one thing, the single most effective thing we could do to get the American electorate to reject Trump and MAGism is govern better, is deal with our own shit, okay, is change some of our policies. And the very same people who are screaming the loudest about how terrible Trump is are the people pushing abolish ICE and defund the police and radical identity politics, the very things that empower Trump even more. So that basically is the battle I'm trying to fight.
Which is a big battle, by the way. That's a huge battle right now, because let's take what Trump did in D.C., for example. Do you agree with him coming in with the National Guard and helping clean up that city? Because the videos have gone viral. The citizens loved it, actually. They feel very safe. The streets are safe. Would that be something you would be open to in Seattle? Because right now, Chicago and Pritzker are fighting back on that notion right now.
I do not agree with using the United States military for domestic law enforcement. And let me say, but I spent a lot of time in D.C. Ironically, both of my children actually now live in D.C. As the Lord is my witness, we raised them back here, but the jobs they found wound up being in D.C. So they live in the city. And yes, it is not safe. The solution, to my mind, is what you said just a moment ago: more cops. All right. hire more cops, and also have a Justice Department that enforces the law. Have a prosecutor that's willing to prosecute. But using the U.S. military on the streets of our cities is dangerous and problematic. And you know this, Dan. The U.S. military is not trained in domestic law enforcement. You're basically trained to kill people, which is good. We need to have that skill set. But it's not the same as doing domestic law enforcement. And the notion that we have Texas National Guard people showing up uninvited in Chicago, that's like Civil War shit, all right? To have somebody else's, armed troops showing up in your city uninvited? No, I don't think that's the solution. I want more cops. I want a justice system that holds people personally responsible. In the case of D.C., and there's all kinds of weird rules about how D.C. is run, the federal government actually does have a little bit of a say there. So if the federal government wanted to step in and say, we don't trust the way you're running the police department, we're going to run it. We're going to bring in more cops. We're going to run the Justice Department. I'd be okay with that. I'm not okay with using the United States military for domestic law enforcement.
Well, one correction: the National Guard should be trained in crowd control. That is under their purview to do that kind of stuff. However,
slightly different than domestic law enforcement.
Certainly different. If they're being deployed to protect federal buildings, then that's reasonable and absolutely within the purview of the federal government and the executive branch to make that deployment. For domestic law enforcement, Posse Comitatus Act is pretty clear. Not just the law, but the idea of it. I have to quote Battlestar Galactica here, which is odd, but one of the quotes from Admiral Adama is, "There's a reason you separate military and the police. One fights the enemies of the state, the other serves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people." Untenable. That's not how we do things here, right? And look, it's not that this is the issue. People think of that and they're like, "Oh, you're talking shit about the military or the National Guard." No, I'm telling you that this is how things work. The military, as Adam says, is trained to do one thing, and now the National Guard's different. They're trained in crowd control, but the military in general is trained to do one thing versus the police are trained to do some other thing, and regardless of how you feel about militarized police, which I think I've had a problem with that for a long time as well, the military coming in and taking that position changes the tone and tenor of things. And it's not the solution. But I also understand it to some degree because these places have been so poorly managed by the local and state governments.
And the police was defunded, so now you're trying to catch up.
Yeah, and we can't, I think it's unethical for the federal government to sit back and allow the states to let their people be preyed upon. As you said, so far this year, an average of 29 people get shot every single weekend in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Every single weekend, 29 people get shot. That can't happen in an American city. It just can't. You know what I mean? And it's not a matter of anything other than a lack of desire, as Adam also said, to hold people to account for their own actions. That's really all it is. And, there's deeper levels to this as well. I was talking to Greg Hurwitz about this the other day, actually, about gun violence in particular. And the right and left are never going to agree on what to do about guns specifically. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, the Constitution is quite clear about nothing to be done about them, frankly. But this nihilism that's taken root in our young communities, it's not just the black community. It's not just the black community. These mass shooters you see, this fucking piece of shit that killed Charlie Kirk, all these people are suffering, I've said this many times before, from the same nihilism. They feel like society has nothing to offer them, that they have no hope, they have no future, and as such, they will take hold to any parallel economy, parallel belief system, or anti-government belief they can, and become violent as a result of it. It happens with young people in the Middle East who become terrorists. It happens here with gang members. It happens with mass shooters. That's the same person doing the same shit. Just the circumstances are a little bit different. And that is something that we have to attack wholeheartedly. And it's another thing that we've seen from the left, and when I say the left, I mean the idiots on the left, who constantly tell everybody that America's against them, they have no hope here, all this, the entire country's rigged against them. It's fucking bullshit. There are more black millionaires in America than there are in the entire continent of Africa, right? By a factor of about 100, as a matter of fact. It's ridiculous to say that, but that's been the talking point. And when you tell people long enough that they're hopeless, that they can't achieve anything, they'll start to believe it. And you get the same type of parallel economies that the Italian mafia set up when they came here, that the Irish mafia set up when they came here, and that inner city gangs do right now. It's the same thing, right?
Yep.
You set up a parallel economy, you divest from society, and not only do you not believe in the rules of civilized society anymore, you think you're a soldier in a war. So killing is not just killing other soldiers is okay, but collateral damage is okay as well because you're fighting a war for your people. That is nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And this is one of the problems I have is there is this nihilism, both right and left, sort of go for the nihilism that, America is terrible. This generation is being raised in the worst, situation they've ever experienced in their lives. And I think our young people hear that message over and over again. And yes, both the right and the left telling them it's like, it's just such an awful existence here. And we have challenges, no doubt, but human existence has always been challenging. I mean, my gosh, prior to the early 20th century, the odds that you were going to live to be 18 were like 1 in 2. All right. A disease would come through your town. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. People wound up dying. So, yeah, we have our challenges, but we got to give people hope. Our constant messaging is everything that's hopeless and terrible and awful and how you got no chance to do this and no chance to do that. Yeah, you got to work hard, but I think we got to give people some hope here, or the nihilism is going to spread, and we've seen that. You perfectly described exactly what is happening.
Yeah, this is the best country in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
No question about it. And you've got more opportunity here than you could ever possibly have hoped to have had. And look at the world crumbling around us right now as well. All these countries that we thought where Western countries with free speech and representation now are putting people in prison for memes. Some dude just got an 8-year prison sentence for saying some hurtful words in the UK.
Yep.
That shit ain't happening here.
No.
It's happening in Canada. They're trying to tighten the kill chain, as we say up in Canada right now. They'll take a couple steps forward, 3 steps back, 2 more steps forward until they get their grip around you entirely, and that's what's happening. We're resilient against that here for a number of reasons. One is our Constitution, obviously. 2 is because there are groups of people in black communities in North Alabama, Appalachian white communities who, no matter what happens on Earth, are going to tell the government to go fuck themselves if they go if they overstep in some way, right? Like that, it's built into our DNA in this country to be individualists, which is why you should be deeply suspicious of anybody who espouses any sort of collectivist ideology, whether they're blaming this group or anybody else for anything else. No, the individual is responsible. That's, at the end of the day, that is the entire basis of our government, which is what's made us the best country in the history of the world. We unleashed the power of the individual here. And look at what happened. Nobody can stop us. Nobody can even compete with us in a real meaningful way unless we step on our own dick. You know what I mean? Like the only time our enemies win is when we fuck up. It's not when they beat us. It's only when we fuck up. So this has got to be the message from, regardless of what your political positions are, this is the best country that exists. And there's a reason people are beating down the door to come here. Nobody is trying to emigrate to fucking China and Russia.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like, give me a break, man.
Yeah, and, for you, again, just because I vote on the right, I think it is important to have 2 different parties, but it used to be pretty moderate. Now, it's gotten pretty extreme there.
Well, he was a member, for the audience. Adam was one of the OG members of the, what was it called? The New Democrats.
New Democrats.
Yeah, it was
back in the
it
mid-90s.
was the Bill Clinton Democrats, the centrist people. And
Exactly.
you've said this many times. I mentioned it on the show earlier.
Yeah.
The Clinton administration, aside from the goofy shit that we were doing in Iraq, which they felt like they needed to do whatever, and not taking bin Laden into custody, pretty good.
Yes. And I've said this before. The 2 best presidents in my lifetime have been Clinton and Trump, just for me personally. And it's a Democrat and a Republican. When you don't notice what's going on that much and we're not in wars, great. That's, and the economy's rolling, that's where I live. And right now, there hasn't been any wars under Trump. Things are going pretty well as far as the economy and everything else.
Well, he did lose.
He negotiated that Israel ceasefire last night, which we'll see
great.
here in the next couple days what happens.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he's kind of been out of the news for, I don't know, the last few days. And the government shutdown, just as a normal person walking around in America, by the way, nobody's really talking about it.
No, you're right. No one's paying attention to the
No.
details of that without.
Nobody. I mean, it's weird because I think the longer that drags out, the less and less people question what is our government actually for. And that's kind of the question we get on the streets right now, where it's like, hey, man, have you been paid? Are you good? Is everybody else good? We're fine. And the government's shut down. So what do we need them for?
Let me explain a couple things about that are important. First of all, it's never actually been accurate that there's a government shutdown. 72% of the budget is mandatory. It keeps going no matter what. So if we shut down the entire government, if your Medicare wasn't working, if your Social Security wasn't working, if your pension payments weren't making, if you're retired military, retired federal employees, that'd be an entirely different thing. But the mandatory portion of the budget isn't affected, A. B, even on the discretionary portion of the budget, all the federal employees have to keep showing up to work, okay? They're not getting paid, but they keep showing up to work. So I'm not going to walk too far down this road of, what's the federal government for? If we really shut down the federal government, people would be talking about it. So it's always been a bit of an inaccurate statement to say that the government is shut down.
Yeah, but why are they using it then? Because that's what it makes it. That's what it makes it feel like.
It's just leverage,
Why aren't they using what? I'm sorry.
No. Why are they using government shutdown? And oh my God, it's shut down week 2, top of every news. David Muir, all these guys.
I don't know if you've noticed, but the media tends to go for extreme statements to try and get people's attention. Dull, accurate depictions of what's happening don't attract eyeballs in the same way.
Right.
So that's why they're using that type of language. It's more dramatic.
Sure.
But it's not 100% accurate for all the reasons I stated.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think we can't pass a bill to fund the military during these so-called government shutdowns? Why is that?
We usually do.
Well, there's been a number of votes, right?
Yeah.
So far, and it's not been done. So why has it not been done?
But the reason we're not doing it right now is Mike Johnson is taking a very weird position on this shutdown. He said, we're shut down, so Congress, go home. We're not going to be in session. I've been through, I think it's at least 2 previous shutdowns in 2013 and 2019. We were always in session, passing legislation. In 2019, we passed legislation to pay the troops, to pay a variety of different folks. So I think one of the things, we should be in session. It's Friday. I'm trying to figure out I'm not supposed to be home at this point. I'm supposed to be getting ready to hop on a plane in D.C. to come home. We should be in session and we should be passing these laws. There's no reason, just because we haven't funded the discretionary portion of the budget past October 1, there's no reason that Congress shouldn't be in session passing legislation that's needed. And number 1 on that list, to my mind, would be pay the troops.
Well, why is it not in session, aside from just his discretion?
It's his choice, period. Full stop.
Really?
Mike Johnson is the speaker. He's decided, when we're not in session.
So when he says, hey, we're not in session, that's it. That goes for everyone?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, it is possible if at the time he makes a motion to adjourn, if we're all organized and ready, a majority of members could overrule him at that point. But that basically never happens. And certainly his caucus isn't going to overrule him. So he has the power to make that decision. And that's the decision that he has made.
Well, let's talk about the shutdown and the big sticking point. I think that's is going back and forth on both sides. Obviously, the White House and Trump have been memeing it relentlessly here, and it's over funding for illegals for health care.
That's really very inaccurate. That's 100% inaccurate.
How so?
Well, because what it is, first of all, it's about even more than just the ACA. But for the moment, let's focus on extending the tax credits for the ACA. It's about a lot more than that. But the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and Dan and I talked about this earlier. First of all, the ACA specifically says benefits shall not go to illegal immigrants. There are states that find ways around that. But even being generous, at an absolute minimum, at least 95%, probably more, of the healthcare benefits will be going to American citizens. So to say that this is about funding illegal immigrants, no, it's about the 95% at a minimum American citizens whose health care insurance is going to go up dramatically and drive a lot of people off of insurance. So the issue of extending the tax credits, to dismiss that as being about funding for illegal immigrants, is just fundamentally dishonest, number one. Number two, the shutdown is broader than that. Basically, the Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the White House. So what they've done all year long is they've passed purely partisan bills, which is fine, by the way. I'm not making Republicans are terrible. No, you got the power, you got the votes, go vote, do what you think is best. That's fine. But now, because of the filibuster rule in the Senate, they need at least 7 Democratic votes to pass a continuation of their appropriations bills, of their budget. And the Democrats are saying, we're not going to vote for a purely Republican partisan budget. If you need our votes, you're going to have to talk to us. And that's the second thing that Mike Johnson is doing. He's saying, forgive me, no, fuck you. We passed what we passed. You got to eat it. We're not going to talk to you. And why would a Democrat vote for something that doesn't reflect any of their concerns or priorities? So those are 2 points I hope you will ponder.
Well, one of those points I gotta push back on. So definitely there's $200 billion per year on average being spent on illegals in healthcare.
The Affordable Care Act?
Well, in a number of different ways. You can see it.
Yeah, well, not out of the Affordable Care Act, and that's what we're asking.
Not entirely, but a lot of them are. So the special rule for immigrants in the Obamacare Act accounts for about $27 billion a year. The federal funding for non-citizens about $91 billion a year. The California loophole is $34 billion a year in federal funding. Enhanced FMAP for emergency care to illegal immigrants about $28 billion a year. Somewhere around $200 billion per year is what's happening. And yeah, maybe it's only 5%, but to quote Joe Rogan, if you put 95% ham and 5% shit between bread, would you still be willing to call that a ham sandwich and take a bite out of it? I would say absolutely the fuck not. These people do not belong in our country.
And that analogy doesn't work in this context.
It sure does work, sir. It absolutely works, because this is American taxpayers paying money, people that are struggling to afford their food and their rent and their mortgage, and they're spending money on illegal immigrants to go to hospitals that we fund when they shouldn't be here in the first place.
Let's get into that issue.
Sure.
Okay. And let me just say, we talked about this earlier. 100% Democrats did not secure the border. 100% asylum is entirely too easy in this country. We allowed too many people in, and we created that problem. But if you're talking about illegal immigrants, you also have to wrestle with the reality that for at least 70 years, our economy has been dependent upon the labor of illegal immigrants. We have let them come into this country, and we have let them work in a wide variety of areas, farming, landscaping, and a lot of these people you're talking about, are not drug dealers sneaking across the border to murder Americans. All right. They're coming in here to work and raise their families and live the American dream. And this has been something we have relied on for a very long time. And you have people who are here illegally, who have been here for decades, raised families, paid taxes, contributed to this society. I am not going to say that we should self-deport those people by cutting off all access to any benefits. Now, we got to tighten the border. We got to make sure that we don't just let them in. We can't have the asylum laws. But do you really want families who have been here for years, who are vital parts of our community, to say, no, we're going to kick you out now. We're going to deny health care to you. We're going to deny access to education. And I know I'm speaking to the wrong audience to make this point, but I believe this. We have illegal immigrants in this country who are positive parts of our community, who I think there should be a pathway to citizenship for.
Okay, well, a number of things. So there are plenty of legal ways to handle this in a way that doesn't risk our security or put unnecessary strain on schools, prisons, and hospitals. Germany did a really good job of it with the Polish border back in the 80s and 90s, where they passed legislation that would require federal work permits be issued to any Polish person that wanted one, provided they weren't a criminal. And they could come in for certain amounts of time, whether it's across the border daily or however long. They could work for a German company and they could go back home.
Yes.
And if the German company got caught hiring anybody that wasn't in possession of a federal work permit, their entire business got liquidated, first offense. That's consequence. That matters. The other thing is
That's what we ought to do. No problem.
For the seasonal migrant labor, which I'm perfectly fine with because that's a 3-month harvest period typically. And what I don't want is an American citizen sitting on their ass doing nothing for 9 months out of the year and then working a 3-month job. That doesn't make sense for our economy. So perfectly fine with people from other countries coming in to handle that, provided they're background checked and leave when they're supposed to. As far as the been here for 20 years thing, I'm sorry, but you're going to fall on deaf ears over here when you talk about, well, they've been committing the crime for so long that we just have to accept it now. Of course not. That's unreasonable.
That's not my argument.
That is the argument, though, because they have been committing a crime for decades.
Let me try a different argument on you. We welcome them into this community. We depended upon them for that labor.
Who's we?
All right.
Who's we?
The United States, that's America. Every citizen who goes to the fucking grocery store and buys a goddamn melon, that's who's we. Okay, the same people who go to a hotel room and have somebody clean that hotel room. Everyone who participates in our economy has benefited from that. And I'll tell you, I've talked with farmers and I've talked with other people who've said, okay, well, they're just taking jobs away from Americans who will do them. And I've talked to people who said, I tried that. All right, I put it out there and $30 an hour, okay? You can't get people to do those jobs, all right? We have been dependent upon this labor. It's part of what enables our economy to keep growing. You said it yourself a moment ago. People want to come here, all right? It's one of our great strengths. And our other great strength is we've let them come here. And they've come here and they've helped make our country a better place for all of us.
I don't think allowing unchecked immigration has made our country a better place. I think it's created a bubble.
Completely agree. I'm not talking about unchecked.
Well, that's what it's been, though. I mean, it's been, and it's what you're.
I admitted that.
For sure. What you're describing is an economic bubble. We've created a situation now where there's a bubble that we depend on, but that doesn't make it right. The correct solution is austerity to allow things to regulate, and maybe there's some pain during the process, but then to have Americans go back to fucking work and actually work. We're spending $1.5 trillion a year on welfare. Untenable. Well, there's no reason that 30 to 40% of our budget should be paying for poor people. We can't call ourselves a wealthy country if that is the case, right? And the reason that so many people are on these programs is because they feel like they don't need to work, because no matter what they do, food shows up, and food has to be stopped. That's how you get people to go back to work.
One point about that, a lot of those people who are receiving those food benefits and other benefits, they are working. Okay. And I don't have the percentages off the top of my head. You've given me quite a bit of homework based on our two conversations here. I want to go back and really look at some statistics and get some facts.
Well, we can do this again anytime.
But a lot of the people in America who are getting food benefits, who are getting health care benefits, are in fact working.
Yeah, a lot of them are active duty military people, as a matter of fact. Right?
Yeah.
Which is another solution or another issue to look into for sure. I mean, that's
We took a big swing at that last year, by the way, and shout out to Mike Rogers, who's the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, good friend, my counterpart. He was ranking when I was chair. Last year, we did a quality of life thing for the military, gave the largest pay raise to enlisted ever, 10% plus the 4% that everybody else got. Boosted housing allowance, boosted a whole bunch of benefits to try to tackle that very problem.
Yeah, and a lot of this is also downstream of, this is something else I wanted to talk to you about because it affects everybody. Again, I mentioned it on the show earlier, but we tend to try to solve problems as far downstream as possible in this country because we're stupid and we're lazy. And also, that's where predatory people can sneak in and make some money, to be fair. But inflation is the largest tax that any human being will ever experience in their lives. And we've experienced inflation to the rate of 78% since 2000 because of greedy little piglets in D.C. that think it's okay to spend our money. That's really what it is. And the Fed, who goes unchecked, printing money as they see fit. We're and it creates these downstream problems. People talk about government policy, this government policy or that government policy, or this corporation or that business or this industry that has affected this huge gap between inflation and wage growth. And there is a huge gap. There's no question about that. It's something like 400%. It's way off. However, inflation is the issue. right? If we continuously devalue our dollar, we have to rely on what is effectively slave labor in some of these cases to get stuff done. And even the people who are Americans who are working if you should be able to work 40 hours a week and afford a home.
Yeah.
That should be our goal as a society. If you can't, certainly there's levels to it, and things change over time. Economics are cyclical to some degree, so fine. However, in a good economic period, a person working 40 hours a week should be able to afford a fucking house.
Yeah.
And that's not the case right now. The average home price in America is
$493.
Yeah,
$493,000.
That is absolutely insane right now, and it is the result of inflation. So what are we doing to deal with it? What are we doing to deal with inflation? Is the question I have for you.
Yeah, so two things. First of all, the wages are part of the issue as well. All right. Because, I mentioned this, I forget, on the show earlier. My father was a baggage handler at United Airlines. The year he passed away in 1985, he made $16 an hour, which was enough at that time in order to, pay for the house or whatever. Now, the cost of housing, education, in South King County, where I grew up, has gone up significantly. But the wages have also not gone up that much. Most of the wealth that has been generated has been going to investors and shareholders. Okay. And I don't have anything particularly against Amazon, by the way, so I hate using this example. I think Amazon does a lot of good things. But there is a warehouse. They call it a fulfillment center. I've worked in warehouses. It's a fucking warehouse. It's not a fulfillment center. But anyway, it's where they put boxes. And they're very proud. They pay them, I think it's $18 an hour to start. It's down in Kent, not far from where I grew up. You can't make a living on $18 an hour in Kent. Amazon is a $3 trillion company. Their top level executives make tens of millions of dollars. Their shareholders bank an unbelievable amount of money. Why can't a company like that pay these people $30 an hour so they can live? All right. So wages are part. You're not wrong entirely on the inflation piece, but also inflation, relatively speaking, the problem is this specific inflation, housing. The cost of housing and the cost of education and the cost of health.
Energy is up nationwide. A report came out this week, actually. Energy is up 20 to 40% since 2021.
I'm seeing those bills on propane.
It's fucking wild, man.
Those four things are the thing. That's the inflation that's killing the American dream.
It is, yeah.
Housing, energy, healthcare, education.
I think on the right, people have to start consolidating their thinking on this disparity between their love of capitalism, which I love, and highly successful people, which I am, and have many friends who are way more successful than me, and the conservative principle of decentralization. This idea that whether it's government or private industry, power and wealth consolidating in a single spot is bad for a country. It just is, right? And decentralization is the guiding principle of conservatism. It's supposed to be, right? Like the more individuals who are entrepreneurs, the better our country does. That's a fucking fact, right? And not just our country, but any country. And, certainly from the left, the rhetoric becomes, I think sometimes conservative people are just, a Democrat said it, so it can't be true. And that's not how life works, right? You may disagree with I've said this many, many times, you may disagree with their solution to the problem, but if you ignore the fact that a problem exists, you're wrong, because there's clearly a fucking issue here. And you have to come to grips with that. You have to come to grips with the fact that, yes, we like the system of capitalism. It is the best of all the possible systems, and there's no question about that. We like the fact that you can work hard enough or be creative or clever enough to become fucking wildly successful in this country. It's awesome. Yeah. Right. And it's a goal for a lot of people. Some people don't care. A lot of people do care. But decentralization is something that is very important to capitalism. Right. Capitalism means the flow of capital. Right. And capital doesn't flow if it's concentrated. That doesn't work. Yeah. Right.
But Mamdani, for example, he's running on this $36 an hour minimum wage.
Well, he also wants to abolish private property. He's a fucking dummy.
Well, I understand that, but he's kind of speaking like you are of, hey, we've got to do something about these wages.
Well, that's the thing you got to distinguish between. So they're identifying the same problem. They are not offering the same solution. That's not a government mandating Amazon pay $36 an hour versus incentivizing them to do it
Sure.
are wildly different things.
I
And by the
understand,
way,
yeah.
I'm not talking about a $36 minimum. I'm not talking about forcing Amazon to have a minimum wage.
yeah.
Look, I mean, one of the things, corporations exist in this country because of federal law. And the federal law right now says that their number one and only priority has to be shareholder value. I mean, that's a federal law that puts pressure on companies. Like, why can't we say no? You have to balance that. You have to balance your workers' and interests. Now, because if you put a $36 minimum wage, you got these small restaurants, you've got mom and top shops that all of a sudden are priced out. So no, I'm not pushing for a $36 minimum wage. I'm pushing for corporate accountability and responsibility and antitrust legislation where the power becomes changing our laws so that you incentivize companies to take better care of their workers.
Yeah. And by the way,
or just encourage them to do it on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, it was Henry Ford. Henry Ford, no government law came along and said, Henry, you have to pay your workers this amount of money. He said, and it was a very practical decision, I can't have people working for me who can't afford to buy my car. Okay, because that's just stupid. That's limiting my market. So I better pay them enough so they can afford to buy the product that they're making.
Yeah.
I want more thinking like that in the corporate world.
And it's an economic argument. It's not a policy argument, in my opinion. It's an economic and business argument because if you look at the difference between Walmart and Target, Target is smaller. Obviously, Walmart's quite a bit bigger. However, Target pays its employees on average as what I would consider a vested employee, 5 years or more, moving into some sort of position of responsibility, management or whatever, about 20% more, and they make about 20 to 30% more per employee in their stores than Walmart does.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation between how well you take care of your employees and how they perform and how well your business does, right? Not only that, but it's pretty decent PR. And you attract better talent and all this other stuff. There's a million different ways, but he's referring to the fact that by federal law, the only responsibility a publicly traded company has is to the literal shareholders of their company.
Yes.
Right?
It is, yes.
And then there's been some bad responses to that. One of the responses is something called stakeholder, like anybody that might have some societal benefit from that company. Now you have a responsibility to them. That is true, technically speaking. That is true if you're a good, decent human being. That is an absolute fact. It's an ethical fact. It is not a legal fact, nor should it be, right? Because once you allow the government to start manipulating things, it becomes a problem. So the question is then, how do we, because I don't disagree with it in principle, the question is then, how do we incentivize these companies to just do the right fucking thing and stop being a bunch of assles?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're fucking up our country.
I'll stand up and cheer that sentence, by the way, because that is if we could do that, that'd make a huge positive difference in this country.
I think that should be the most bipartisan push of all time. How do we get these people to act like responsible patriots? That's what I want to fucking know.
I don't think you can. I think once you're that rich and people are taking things away from you, you're going to fire more people to stay rich because you don't want to go back.
I actually think there is a pretty decent solution. We've talked about it on this show before. Finland, who we're making real nice with right now, by the way, is doing it pretty well. I think they have the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
They do.
Yes, they
do.
I think it's 1.7 trillion, I believe.
Yep.
So you turn, instead of stakeholder Marxist nonsense, you literally make the people of the country shareholders in things, right? So
invest.
Invest. So there's two countries that do it really well, and there's a couple of emerging countries. I think Brazil's getting involved, but Finland and Saudi Arabia, 1.7 and 1.3 trillion dollars sovereign wealth funds, and that is an appreciating asset. Even when inflation happens, that asset still grows, and then you, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, are a part owner of this thing, right? You're literally invested in your own economy now, not just paying it for it, but you're invested in it. It's a different thing, and I think that's a really good solution. Trump has talked about it, but I haven't seen any. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on right now.
There's been no movement on it, but he has talked about it many times.
That's something that Besant and all these guys need to really hammer down on and get both sides of the aisle, business people especially, because there's a lot of people who entered both Republican and Democratic politics with a lot of wealth already. So they're smart. They know how to do this stuff. And I really think that this is something that we need to push forward. It would change the fabric of our country if we did that. That's my opinion.
And then one more thing, back to the healthcare thing. There is a law, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which hospitals are required to stabilize anyone who shows up for emergency care.
Absolutely should.
No matter of their immigration status.
Yeah, I don't give that. Absolutely, 100%.
That's in there.
That's being a decent human being. I don't give a fuck. Like, do no harm is the first goddamn rule of medicine.
But that's one of the big line items on the budget there that they're looking at. Having been in the hospital myself, depending upon what the severity is of your illness, it can run you. I think mine was $500,000. So I mean, luckily I had insurance, so I didn't have to pay for that.
We're talking about a difference here, right? So the difference is in whether it should be adjudicated in the insurance realm, or whether we should treat them, or whether we should do something about the rising cost of healthcare. Those are two separate problems, right? And both, you can probably maneuver a little bit in both of those zones to make things a little bit better. For example, Tylenol probably shouldn't cost $27 for one pill. Right. That's just my opinion. I'm not a scientist or anything, but just at some point, and I know people don't like government regulation, but at some point somebody's got to do something about the fact that the pharmaceutical industry and the more and more consolidated hospital industry in this country has become predatory, not capitalist, but predatory.
Oh yeah, even to the patients. By the way, when I was in the hospital for 45 days, did you know that there was a barcode for every single thing that they brought in, and it was scanned like I was checking out at the grocery store.
And then they send in your insurance dick to try to offer you more treatments.
Yes.
Like, oh, you should probably do this thing or do this thing. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, dude, what are you? I'm getting used car salesman in the hospital.
There was 346 charges, and I'm going to use that in air quotes there, because every single thing they scanned and went back and said, all right, great. And then there's a fight with the insurance over who's going to pay for that and why.
You know what's ironic about that? You could have 347 charges in Seattle and still not go to prison.
True. Very true.
I have not been in the hospital for 45 days, but I've had 5 major surgeries as an adult. So I've been there and I've experienced that. Yeah, and our healthcare system can definitely be better run. And I like what you said. I mean, that's the balance that I was trying to strike. And everything you said about the individual, about capitalism, about how this is America, you can go do your thing. I mean, look, where I grew up and the background I grew up in, to have had the life that I've had, God bless you and God bless the United States of America is all I can say to that. But you got to have a balance also of, regulating that capitalism so that all the bad things that you just described doesn't happen. And that should be the debate. It's not government regulation is terrible or it's perfect. It's what's the situation? What are we trying to accomplish? How does that balance the needs of our society with the need to continue to incentivize individuals? I'm always trying to find that balance.
Speaking of balance, I believe in it. I believe there should be a Democratic Party and a Republican Party. I'm not one of those people who's just like, no, it's just us and that's it. But it feels like, again, the left is broken up into two right now. How do you guys, I guess, push more moderate candidates back to where the Democratic Party used to be? Because there is a lot of Democrats who are disenfranchised with what their party has become. Is it just the press? Is it just the media? What is it, and what's happening there? Because I don't see a clear leader of your party right now.
Yeah, well, two separate issues. As I've said earlier, and it's not just the press, without question. As I said, I started working on campaigns when I was 15 years old. So I've been at it now for 45 years. There has definitely been a shift to the left along the ideological principles that we've talked about that has been incredibly alienating to a lot of people. How we deal with it, there are a lot of people out there who are trying to push back and drive a different message. That's what you have to do. You have to stand up to these things, do what I do. And I grew up in the Democratic Party. I was elected to be a precinct committee officer in the 33rd District Democrats when I was 19 years old. That same district Democratic organization endorsed my far left opponent in my last election. Okay, so there's a price to be paid for doing what I'm doing. But I'll also tell you, I got 68% of the vote. All right, so I think the Democratic Party needs to look itself in the mirror and say, if you're endorsing people who can't even get a third of the vote, maybe you're out of touch.
Yeah.
And this is my district. This is a 70% Democratic district. I mean, forget about if you're trying to win a swing district. Where they're at is out of touch with the overwhelming majority of Americans. There are a lot of people talking about this. My good friend Rahm Emanuel is out there making a big push on this issue. Alyssa Slotkin has said, we're too woke, we're too weak. I work with a lot of people. I found Dan through a woman named Gretchen Barton, who is trying to reposition Democratic messaging on the same side. I talked with a screenwriter in Los Angeles, Billy Ray, who goes around and talks about this message and says, this is right. So what you do, look, it's politics, all right? You go make your argument. You build a coalition and you go make your argument and you find whatever forum you can find to make that argument to reach as many people as possible. But the number one biggest thing that my party needs to do is acknowledge the fact that far left ideology is the single biggest reason that we have lost to Trump. And there are too many people on the left who fight that. They want to claim, oh, no, it's just because Democrats haven't fought hard enough. If we had just fought hard enough for defund police, then everybody would have agreed with us. No, they wouldn't have. The policy's bullshit and it's wrong, okay? Don't tell me that if I'd just gone out there and fought more aggressively for open borders, then everyone would have signed up and said, oh, yeah, that's great. No, it's the policy that's wrong. We got to admit that. And then there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party who agree with me and everything I just said. But as I said earlier, they don't want to say anything. Because if they say anything, they get attacked. And in some cases, driven out of the party. Now, I'm in a somewhat unique position. I've been doing this for a very long time. I have a strong base of support. I have the chops and the credibility to take this fight on. A, because I'm in a better position to win it. And B, because past a certain point, I don't give a fuck. All right? I love my job. I love what I do, but I've been blessed to have a good career. I've lived. All right? And if, God forbid, my party and my district decides that the way I'm approaching this is wrong, and they want to go with some far left socialist, I have plenty of other things I'll do with whatever I've got left of my life that will make me happy. All right. But if you're a new person coming up, you're like, shit, if I go against this, the left's going to, and I'll be torpedoed before I get out the door. What I want to do, and what Gretchen and Billy Ray and Rahm Emanuel, a whole lot of other people want to do, we want to create the space. So if you're one of those young people who's trying to get involved in politics, you say, well, I can be a more centrist, moderate, sensible person who rejects left-wing extremism and survive and win and go forward. We have to create that space within the Democratic Party, and we got to reach out to the Trump voters. I did a town hall meeting with my district Democratic meeting a couple of days ago, and I was making that point about how, 80 million people, I forget the numbers. If we're going to win, we got to get some of those people back. And you can't act like everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, bigoted Neanderthal, because A, they're not, and B, we're trying to get them back on our side. So that's what we have to do. And it's a tough fight. And I'm not going to make any bold predictions that I'm going to be successful here, but I know it is incredibly important to do it. So I'm going to take a shot.
Yeah, if we can limit the, let's say, AOC's, Jasmine Crockett's, Lauren Boebert's, the
Ilhan Omar's,
the idiots,
yeah,
right, that are just loud, that'd be great. I really think we were talking about this last week, the left, the Democratic Party, rather, not the left specifically, but the Democratic Party needs its silent majority moment. That moment with Nixon where he was like, hey, I know there's a lot of noise out there, but you regular people are the majority. Just calm the fuck down and do what you're supposed to do, and things will be fine. By the way, Katie Porter doesn't
Going
think she
back
needs...
to Clinton, we need our Sister Souljah moment, too.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of my fellow Democrats are missing. A lot of my fellow Democrats are like, you're right, but we don't need to talk about it. Let's just talk about Trump. The American people have lost faith in the Democratic Party because they think we are captured by those extremes. And if we don't stand up and make it clear that we're not going to win that faith back.
Yeah, it's so stupid to lean on identity like that. Talk about the issues that you're right about. Sell that to the public, like you said before. Because here's the problem you run into. This happens on the right and the left. If you just go after the individual, the personality, what happens when they get it right? Like what?
Yeah.
Right now, Trump has negotiated a number of pretty good foreign deals, a number and ended. I guess ended is not the right word, but brought some measure of peace to a couple of different places through not himself, but through a number of people that work for him. As Americans, we should probably celebrate that. I think celebrate
Absolutely.
that. But now you've backed yourself into a corner, not just as a politician, media person, but as an individual that's involved in politics in any way, even as a spectator, where you can't even acknowledge when something good has happened for your country. That's dumb. Yep. And it's fake, and people don't believe it. Right. It's very disingenuous. That whole thing where Katie Porter storms off the interview the other day, talking about how she doesn't need Trump voter. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Even the worst politicians say, well, once I win, I'm governing for everybody.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Even the worst of us say that shit. But she's just like, oh, fuck you.
She said
fuck
the quiet
like,
part
oh
out loud.
God.
She said, I don't need them. It's
Good
60-40. I don't need them.
Now, it turns out a lot of other videos coming out because her staffers hate her and she's just an asshole. But
I saw that.
That's not sweet. So we need to get less of that.
Less of that. And then what do you say to people who say, well, you're nothing but a career politician?
Yeah.
What do you say? Because some people in the chat are asking that right now. Do you believe in that?
I'll say two things about that. First of all, fuck yeah. I mean, what am I going to say? I mean, 25 years old, I got elected to the state senate. I've been in Congress for 30 years. Fuck yeah, I'm a career politician. Okay, but here's the thing. I don't think that is a bad thing. I happen to think that being a politician, trying to bring disparate groups of people who disagree together to solve problems is an actual skill set. Okay, I have brokered so many different deals. As chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, I passed 4 National Defense Authorizing Acts. Donald Trump signed 2 of them. I had to work with Jim Inhofe, who was the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I've brokered deals back here in my district, the details of what you're going to do. I know my district and my constituents better than anybody. Okay, so I don't have any shame in that. Now, where being a career politician is bad is if you become captured by the office. But I stayed in my district. I raised my family here. I live in this district. I stay connected to this district. And also, if you're a career politician who's holding on, but as I just said a minute ago, fuck it. I'm going to say what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And if people don't vote for me, I'm fine. So I just think it's wrong to say that someone who has experience as a politician is by definition an alien being. I run into people all the time at the gym. Oh, what are you doing here? I fucking live here. What do you mean? What am I doing here? It's like, I don't do that. I work in D.C., but, I go to the grocery store. My kids went to school here. My wife was a PTA president. My kid played soccer in this community. This is my community. I'm connected to it. My taxes go up. Regulations go up. Crime happens to me. My house was vandalized by far-left lunatics right after October 7th. This is my community. I am connected to it. You want to call me a career politician, whatever. Tell me that I'm not doing my job. Tell me that I'm not representing the people of my district, that I'm not connected to the people of this district and fighting for them. And if you want to take that charge at me, then fucking let's go. I mean, I know what I'm doing, and I think I'm doing a damn good job. And if you don't, then vote for somebody else. But me having done this for my lifetime does not separate me from society somehow.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about your house being vandalized by, quote unquote, your own party?
Well, that's not the party, but more specifically, what should the federal government be doing about Antifa and whatever that is, that, kind of amorphous blob of stupid leftist violent nonsense?
Because I'm assuming that's who vandalized your house, right?
Yeah. Now, how I felt about it, I'll be perfectly honest with you, is, my dominant attitude. They also showed up at 5 o'clock in the morning, banging drums, screaming at me one night. And my dominant feeling was, fuck you, let's go. All right? Because what you are doing is contrary to the United States of America, but also, I think, destroying my party, the Democratic Party. I mean, you're pushing us into a corner that makes us irrelevant and ineffective. And if I've got to battle you, and if you think coming and yelling at me is going to discourage me, then you don't fucking know me. All right. I tell this story all the time. I just want to give you an idea of who I am. When I ran for that state Senate seat when I was 25, nobody thought I could win. My father had passed away. I grew up. I didn't have assets. There was a poll done in June of 1990 that had me down 61-12. And pretty much all the powers that be said, oh, yeah, this is not worth doing. I won. All right. I didn't give up. I kept fighting and I kept working. That's my personality and that's who I am. I don't quit. So I believe in what I'm doing very passionately. And if you think yelling at me and pissing me off and doing all that is going to threaten and intimidate me into not standing up for what I believe in, then you don't fucking know who I am. All right. That was my dominant reaction to it. As far as what we ought to do about it, we ought to arrest people who commit crime. We ought to prosecute them and we ought to hold them responsible for their actions. That's what we ought to do. It's not complicated. We just need to do it.
But is that your city council and your mayor versus you? Because that doesn't often overlap.
Well, yeah, no, it's a problem. The city of Bellevue, where I live, is actually pretty good. I got no complaints about the city of Bellevue. King County, in terms of how they prosecute things, they're not enthusiastic about prosecuting people for the reasons we stated earlier, and that creates a bit of a problem. They're not enthusiastic about enforcing the law because they think the criminal justice system is awful, evil, terrible, and not to be abolished. So that's a problem. We are shifting that a little bit, slightly, but yeah, that's the battle and that's the fight and again, I also want to emphasize here, I believe in helping people. I do. I'm a Democrat for a reason. All right. I believe in the power of collective action to help people as much as I believe in individuals. But there's got to be accountability and there's got to be personal responsibility. And also, on the political violence side, we need to speak out clearly and unequivocally against it whenever it happens, including, by the way, the notion that it's okay to show up at your elected official's private residence and scream at them for an hour. That's not okay. That is an effort to intimidate and silence the political process that takes us away from freedom. Takes us away from the basic freedom to have a civil conversation about how we ought to be governed. So that's what we ought to do about that.
Heading towards 2028, and going back to who the leader of the party is, who would you like to see become president or run for president in 28? I'm looking at the current polls. Yeah. Now, obviously, this is a ways out, but Kamala Harris right now is number one. She is the number one favorite person. We saw what happened in the last election, and it wasn't so great. AOC is currently tracking at number 2. Who would you like to see in there that's an actual candidate who can win? Because I don't think either the two of them can win.
Yeah, no, agreed. Look, number of people that I like. I've mentioned Ruben Gallego a number of times. Big fan of his. Big fan of Mark Kelly's. I like Rahm Emanuel, as I've said. He's a little rough for perhaps the Democratic Party in some respects, but I like Rahm because he gets shit done.
What about his brother Ari?
Ari Emanuel, from Entourage. Yeah. I don't think he's running in this.
Jeremy Piven.
Yeah, that show. I actually just watched that show like over the summer, and it was okay. It kind of lost it a little near the end. They made Ari into lunatic.
Everybody jumps the shark.
So, but anyway, so I like them. I like Shapiro, Andy Beshear, a couple governors. Gretchen Whitmer, I think, is a decent governor. Gina Raimondo, former governor of Rhode Island, Commerce Secretary. We do not lack for talent in the Democratic Party. Any one of those people that I just listed. I mean, Gavin Newsom is up there as well. I'm not a huge fan for a variety of different reasons that I don't want to get into. But
I live there, and he destroyed that state. And right now, he's the guy that is doing every single interview on the planet for your party, and it seems like he's the guy who's trying to position.
Well, he's definitely trying.
Because one of the other things that I believe in, and I was one of the first people to come out and say that Joe Biden should get out of the race, I want a presidential nominee who is capable of putting forth a strong argument. I want an articulate, passionate spokesperson for my party. I mean, the idea that we ever for 1 second thought that Joe Biden was a credible nominee for president in 2024 was always deeply troubling to me. And Gavin Newsom is an effective speaker. He's an effective fighter. So I do like that about him. But on the policy point, a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here, he was governor of California when it was happening in California. Now he's changing his tune a little bit. And, I'm all in favor of people, changing their mind and moving in a different direction. But those are some of the people that I think could be effective and deliver a message. And I think there's a lot of them. in the Democratic Party that could do that.
I think you need somebody with gravity. Say what you want to about Trump, but he's got gravity. In a period of tumult,
Absolutely.
when your party is fractured and the fringe is trying to take it over or move it in a different direction, or it's just caustic or disorganized or whatever, you need a candidate who's powerful enough that
We need strength.
yeah, well, you need a candidate that's
strong
powerful enough
candidate.
that other politicians are afraid to offend them because their constituents might fuck off and go vote for somebody else if they don't, right?
Right.
And it's not like authoritarianism is not great, but strong leadership is great, right? And it's the I guess it's a baseline for people like, hey, this is what we're doing right now. Everybody get on board or go get fucked, right?
Yep.
And what the Democratic Party definitely needs right now is for everybody to get on board and squeeze these knuckleheads out of their party entirely. Completely, get the fuck out of here. You guys are children playing at a children's game. You're not 19 years old in college anymore. You're grown adults still talking about the same stupid shit you did when you were 19 in college as an undergrad. Shut the fuck up and grow up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But you got to have somebody that's strong to do that, and also somebody that doesn't give a fuck. Like you just can't. You can't. I think Shapiro would be a great president. I don't think he would be a great president right now for that reason, because the party's too fractured. You need somebody that's an asshole.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. He's a sweetheart. You need somebody that's an asshole.
Yeah, but you're going back to the Israel-Palestine thing, and they burned his house down over Christmas, and obviously that's not great.
Well, it's like you can't let those few very loud voices, take on outsized importance. And that's part of the problem is people see that. They see these small, loud groups like, oh my God, this must be a huge movement. How can I possibly stand up to these people? No, they're just loud and aggressive. They do not have numbers on their side.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about. I watched your Twitter this morning, and you were talking about Trump and the weaponization of the DOJ, in particular, and indicting Letitia James for mortgage fraud, which essentially what he was indicted for in New York there, and then
It's not the same thing. Not even close to the same thing, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, look, a judge deemed that Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million when I've been there. No offense, but it's worth upwards of $300 to $400 million. I mean, a golf course on the beach in Florida, pretty pricey there, and he decided to make his own decision. Now, her case, which has come out, is lying about a residence that was not her primary residence, and then leveraging that into mortgage fraud.
Also putting her father as her husband on a form.
Correct.
That's not great.
No.
Now the one where it's and then there was another one where she the paperwork said that there was 4 residences instead of 5. That's also fraud. But the one where it's the one where it's a valuation of the property, she wouldn't have been in charge of that. So I don't think that. Same reason the reason the judge threw the one out against Trump, because it's fucking bullshit. It has nothing to do with him.
But that was a long time later after they found him guilty. So
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess your point is that
the weaponization has been going on for a while.
The DOJ has been weaponized, not just the DOJ, but the entire intelligence community during this Russia collusion hoax. Look, let's be really clear. There's smoke, not yet 100% proof, but it appears to me that, as somebody who worked in the IC a little bit, that Obama definitely or his subordinates ordered people to trump up charges, no pun intended, that are complete nonsense and weaponized, not just the DOJ, but the entire intelligence community against Donald Trump. They spied on him. They just got caught again last week using the FBI. But Jack Smith to spy on some of your colleagues, and this has been going on for some amount of time now.
Agree with that assessment. Just be clear. And I will say, on the mortgage fraud issue, there are 3 members of Trump's cabinet who did the same thing. When are those indictments coming down?
Yeah. There was somebody else too on the Democratic side. It was a governor somewhere. I can't remember who it was that was doing the same bullshit.
Yeah,
I don't remember who it was.
People have done it, but in all seriousness, I mean, there were 3 members of Trump's cabinet who did exactly what Letitia James did. It was revealed. They found the documents. They done the same thing. How come they're not being indicted?
Yeah, I think the more appropriate response, I tend to agree with you, actually. I think the more, because people want revenge, but the more appropriate response is to apply the law as it stands. She should be stripped of her law license. She should probably be impeached as Attorney General of New York for what she pulled, all the bullshit she pulled. That's fine. But to go after criminally for it is using the Department of Justice in a way that's not intended, right?
But it's been used that way for a very long time.
Yeah.
and
That's
the
100% right. But
Sorry, guys,
if you caught somebody shitting in your water supply, would you be like, well, I'm going to fucking shit in it too? No, it's not. And because the DOJ doesn't belong to me or you or them or us or whatever, or them or us, it belongs to all of us. We all have to use that to get justice in our country, and to pervert it because they did is a mistake, in my opinion.
God.
Yeah, I have to go in just a couple of minutes, but
Yeah, you're fine.
I would like to come back on at some point and at great risk to myself have that Russia hoax conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Because the fact that the Russians were trying to interfere in the 2016 election is not disputed.
No, they try to interfere in every election. As a matter of fact, they're running giant bot farms on social media right now to try to influence our politics.
Yes.
My friends are the ones tracking that stuff.
Okay. So that's good. And then the Trump connection is a more complicated conversation. But I want to make sure we don't lose track of the fact that it was not wrong for the Obama administration to see what Russia was doing and be worried about it. The Trump stuff is a much longer conversation I don't have time to get into. But let's not let the Russians get away with this without trying to do something.
There's a number of things before we get off here that I'll address. One, the Obama administration was made very clear to them and to the CIA that the Steele dossier was bullshit, and they ran it anyways as part of that program. And it looks like the Obama office, whether it was him or somebody else in that office, told them to do it. I don't think that's in question. Frankly.
I actually, because of my armed services stuff, I've looked into this in great depth, that I don't agree with that assessment. There wasn't just the Steele document tying Trump and his campaign to what the Russians were doing.
No, definitely not. But it was added. It was added even though they knew it was false, which implies a great deal of malice on their part.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the details of that. I do know that there was considerable evidence and concern. I mean, I said I wouldn't get into this, and now here I am getting into this. A Russian operative literally met with the Trump campaign, I think it was in New York, and said, hey, I've got dirt on Hillary Clinton. Are you interested in it? Okay, that meeting actually happened. Now, apparently, the Trump folks said pass, all right? But it was worth at least taking a look at the Paul Manafort and all that other stuff to see what the connections might have been. And then the, I'm spacing on the guy's name, Robert Mueller, he looked into it and he concluded smoke, no fire. All right. Fair enough. And we did not impeach Trump about that. But to say that it shouldn't have been investigated is the part that I have a hard time with.
Investigated, but that's not how it went down. You put your hands up in the air like it was hands off after that, but the media never stopped talking about it, nor did your colleagues in the Congress.
Well, that's true, but that's different than the Justice Department prosecuting somebody. I can't control the media, or as we've discussed today, I mean, people on the right and left. There's always going to be somebody saying something stupid on both sides of the political spectrum on every topic. That's a slightly different thing. I do have to run, but this is great. I really enjoy this conversation. I'm happy to come back, and continue it, because we got to have a dialogue out there between different political perspectives to get this country healed and moving in a more positive direction.
I agree.
Yeah,
and at the end of the show, we always do this thing called Drinking Bro of the Week, which is someone who inspires you or helps you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinking Bro of the Week to?
It's Medgar Evers, believe it or not. I know that sounds a little weird, but when I was in my freshman year of college, I read his wife's book. I was just trying to figure out who I wanted to be politically. And Myrlie Evers, wrote the book about her husband's experience. What really struck me, they were average people in a situation they didn't want to be in. They weren't like wanting to be heroic or whatever. He just found himself in that situation. It related to me. Yeah. I connected with it.
For those who don't know, Medgar Evers was one of the chief plaintiffs.
I was no genius, whatever, but I wanted to make a difference. Here was an average person who made a difference. Yeah. My son's middle name is Evers. Because of that, I've always greatly admired Medgar Evers and his wife, for that matter. They really inspired me to get involved in politics and public policy.
Great. Yeah, he's a good one. Evers was involved in Brown v. Board, all that stuff, and was assassinated for his activism, just trying to get black kids into school.
Yes.
So
I remember him. And then there's a great book by Rosa Parks called Nah. You should check it out. I'm kidding. I appreciate your time today. Seriously, we should have more conversations like this with the right and the left. And I really appreciate you coming on the program today.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I hope you enjoy the weekend.
yes,
Absolutely. You too. Have a great one. Thank you for tuning in. Go to iTunes, rate the show a 5-star, and leave a quick review. Also, head on over to Spotify, where this video will be available nationwide, worldwide, everywhere else. For D'Anthony Hollaway, I'm Ross Patterson. This